What doesn't scale will make you money. What scales will put you right out of business, especially in the world of automation, process management, software development, and AI. So treating people like scalable assets is the fastest way to find yourself in your own self-created prison cell of obsolescence. Treating people like miracles, each of which is completely unique to the other, and putting them in a position to really show what it is they're capable of. Well, now you're going to build an organization that's going to last forever, you know?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Eternal Optimist Podcast, where I'm your host, Pat Drinkon, and today it's going to be a fantastic conversation. This is our second time that we have had the world shifter, the amazing titan of marketing, the titan of international hiring. You know, someone who's had a major impact in my life from the Front Row Dads and from business. He's selfless of his time and pouring back into others. And we've got an amazing conversation on the docket today with Mr. Kasim Aslam. How do I say your last name, Kasim? I've known you for years. I don't know if I'm ever saying your last name right.
It's the same thing. I've got the same problem. I say drink on, but I don't know if it's drink on or drink in.
Drink on. It's perfect. The first time.
I got it.
Perfect.
Drink. All right. Yeah,
that was it.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my first name and my last name rhyme. It's Kasim Aslam. But I think, Matt, what I'm going to do is I want to be like Oprah or Cher. I just want to be Kasim. Like, I'm the only Kasim you're ever going to know. Yeah. So I might as well just like plant my flag and like, oh, I'm just Kasim. And everybody's like, oh, do you know Kasim? There's a senator, I think, in Atlanta named Kasim. And there's a boxing, a guy who writes about boxing in London. And I'm going to hopefully steal both of their identities so that there can be only one.
If Kasim, that I'm talking to right now, if Kasim were in some type of role, like you said, there's another Kasim down in Atlanta politics. If you were in politics and you were going to lead us, is there a platform you'd run on?
Yeah, it's the petrodollar. I think that fiat currency is the biggest open-air conspiracy in the history of humanity. I think it's I think it's satanic, dude. I think that the fact that a private organization can print our money at will and lends it to us at interest, I do not understand why we're not all up in arms picketing farmers with pitchforks all the time. It's insane. And money is meant to preserve wealth. Money is a representation of time because you trade time for money. And people who think they don't or pretend they don't do. It's the reason that the Romans used to pay people in salt. That's where that phrase, he's not worth his salt comes from. And salt is a preservative. Yeah. It's the best example of currency, I think. The reason that most historic currencies have lasted, gold, silver, precious metals, bullion, etc., is because they preserve. Money is meant to preserve wealth. To have a currency where inflation is built into the system is to devalue human life. It's actually a slave system. And what's worse about it is we force people to use it at the tip of a spear, and for a bunch of reasons. I can get real libertarian and Ron Paul on you. But if we were to have a non-fiat currency, a commodity-backed currency, a bunch of things happen. The first one is slow and controlled growth, which actually it sounds good, but people don't want that. Like, you don't have these massive fluctuations and this huge arbitrage opportunity, but you put an emphasis on that which is of value. All the people that make money right now, like, dude, all of Wall Street is nothing but a bunch of just absolute scum-sucking debutantes. They're just horrific, horrible humans who create nothing, build nothing, develop nothing, craft nothing, invent nothing. They're these Ivy League, Goldman Sachs, bean-counting douchebags who just move this from here to there, but because and they're stealing from you, and we don't even realize that. The people who don't create should not earn. That's a fact that I think should be religious. People who do not create should not earn. But the currency system that we're in allows for the douchebags to earn, and for the men and women that are actually creating, they become prey animals. And if you were to build a commodity-backed currency, the only thing you could ever trade would be value for value. Right now, we're in a position where people are trading money as quickly as they can because money is being devalued. So it's like, let me quickly enter the market, or and that's for the people that are intelligent with their money. For the people that aren't intelligent with their money, it's where they're incentivized to spend and borrow, spend and borrow, spend and borrow, spend and borrow. So it's the slave system. So, and dude, it's so funny too, because I act like I know what I'm talking about. I'm just a parrot. Like, you can go back and watch the old Ron Paul videos, and this is all that he used to say all the time. And it's true, and it's important. We should not owe a private organization and entity that which we expend our life force to earn. If and when I've earned something, if I'm a dude, it used to be a man could break bricks on the side of the road and raise a family of 4, right? Single family home, chicken in every pot.
Mm-hmm.
And that should continue. What fiat currency does is it devalues labor. The 8 hours I spent working yesterday is actually worth 7 hours and 40 minutes today. And tomorrow it will only have been worth 7 hours and 20 minutes, and so on and so forth. To devalue a person's life, like, what is that? That's murder. And we just, and the other thing too is everybody, talk to any economist, talk to anybody that knows, and talk to them about fiat currency and the central bank and the Federal Reserve and the creature from Jekyll Island. And they're all like, oh yeah, no, I know. They don't, this isn't a conspiracy theory, dude. This isn't, they're just like, yeah, no, I know. It's horrible. What are you going to do? You know what I mean? It's fractional reserve banking. Are you kidding me? Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't pencil. The math doesn't work. So I think money is so important. Obviously, money's a path to freedom. And what's worse, what makes me a massive hypocrite is, I'm wealthy now. It wasn't, you and I started this conversation before we started recording, talking about how we were both poor kids. Now that I'm wealthy and I know how the system works, I actually use this pernicious evil for my benefit, because I know how it functions. And so I know what asset classes to buy and where to put my money and how to, as soon as you can get on the other end of inflation, basically, as soon as you can build passive recurring income that beats inflation, the snowball works in your favor. But it's like any MLM. It's we, the wealthy, are it's predation. We're actually living off of, what it is. And it's not in this country. That's the worst part that people don't understand. It's the whole rest of the world that pays the price for the petrodollar. 60% of the US dollar is held by the international world, 60%, which means that we only pay 40% of the inflation bill, which means that no matter how bad inflation gets, the rest of the world suffers. And dude, I'm not trying to play woke savior. I'm not that guy. In so many ways, I'm like a rabid anarcho-capitalist. And what we've done is wrong. Like, it's wrong. And I think at some point there's hell to pay. Anyway, that was a bit of soapboxy. I didn't know you were going to ask me that question, dude. I'm so sorry. I went off on a tangent.
No, your tangents are brilliant. And, there is going to be hell to pay. It's just, what does hell look like? When do we have to pay it? And, how are we going to survive that? Because it kind of reminds me of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome with Tina Turner running that movie with Mel Gibson, where yesterday she was basically a server at a restaurant, and the next day she's like the tyrant that runs the whole apocalyptic post wasteland. And it's not too far fetched from reality if we keep borrowing before we actually have created that value first, and we just keep printing more money, basically. So I'm with you on what you're sharing. I think I heard about it for the first time, maybe it was 20 or 24 years ago, when Ron Paul was actually going for president. I remember hearing him debate on the stage, and I liked his ideas. And he wasn't part of the machine, though. I think he was trying to run for maybe Republican or Libertarian or Green. I don't know what it was back then, but he was trying.
But he's a little too focused on gold, I think. I hate his kid. Rand Paul we could have had a strong libertarian candidate in Rand Paul, but he tried too much to inject himself into the machine. The mistake Ron made is he got myopic in scope. I don't think his proposal of the gold standard was smart, but it doesn't have to be gold. It can be anything. Dude, a commodity, it could be bubblegum. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm saying that with a massive hyperbole, by the way. To have a commodity-backed currency doesn't even mean that the commodity needs to change hands. It could be land. The U.S. has the most valuable landmass in the world, obviously. It could be any limited resource of which the value is a priori axiomatic. Like everybody knows that this is valuable. That becomes the commodity. And then it's not a commodity trade, it's commodity backed. That's what people don't understand. Because when Ron Paul kept talking about gold, they're like, oh, what are we going to be doing? Trading gold coins? And it's like, no, you're not grasping the concept of having something underneath the currency that anchors it to reality. That's why crypto is freaking brilliant. Everybody that bashes crypto doesn't understand, and actually I think most of the crypto bros don't understand, crypto is backed by math. It's not fake. It's not vapor. Like people who think that crypto is not real, which you hear from really smart people, Charlie Munger, crypto's backed by math. Now, what you need everybody to be complicit. So gold is interesting, dude, because gold has no functional reality. Gold cannot conduct electricity. Gold can't build things. Gold can't. The only reason gold's valuable is because we all agree it's valuable. And as soon as we all agree gold's not valuable, like silver is actually way more from an industrial perspective. Silver has way more application than gold does. And yet gold is what we've all chosen because everybody's just decided. And math can be that same way. Like we could all decide one day, like, okay, the Bitcoin math makes sense. It's decentralized, if you believe that. And so it really has so much more to do with social acceptance, social permeation. But to return to the original thesis, a person should be able to work, and the value of their work should be anchored against something that does not degrade, or the degradation is natural. Right? So it would be like if I trade you for meat, let's say I work a day of my life to I'm a carpenter and I make a chair, and then you're a rancher, and I trade you some chair for some amount of beef, and we decide what that is, and that's the invisible hand of the market. The degradation of that beef is natural, and I'm able to plan for it on my terms, right? I can salvage as much of it as I can salvage, I can save as much as I can save, I can freeze as much as I can freeze, and I eat as much as I need to eat. It's not built because tomorrow you can't print more cow, right? And if you could, you suddenly throw off the whole market that you and I just agreed to. Because I was like, hey, this is how long this chair took me to build. How much cow is this worth? And if you in the background could just print more cow, it sounds so childish. That's so unfair. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Well, that's not fair. Yeah. I just spent my whole day making this chair, and you can just print another cow. But that's the world that we're in. So here's where while we're on the Eternal Optimist podcast. Here's where I'll tell you I am optimistic. AI, first of all, is an absolute, complete, and total miracle. In ways that I don't understand, and I think most people still don't understand. It's amazing, and I think in 100 years AI will have solved all our problems. In 30 years, it's going to be a shitstorm from hell as to how we contend with the labor crisis. But what's nice about AI, and I'm not, again, I'm just a parrot. I'm not the person who said this, but I believe this. AI, because of its efficiency at scale, makes everything free. So we're going to move into a world where we achieve absolute efficiency from the valuation of every commodity perspective. All supply chain issues go away. All timeline issues from a supply chain perspective go away. So all the like, are we producing enough of this for the market to come? Prognosticative issues. I don't know what our children are going to do for a living, Matt. Like I don't mean that in a dystopian way. I mean that almost in a utopian way. It's like all of their needs will be satiated. And now people are going to be put in this really interesting position of like, well, what do you do when you actually don't have to worry? It's almost like financial freedom for everybody, but in a forced way. If we don't have UBI in the next 10 years, I will be shocked. I'll just be absolutely bowled over and shocked. And it's not just fiscal either. I think AI solves so many, like AI already beats all radiologists 1,000 times out of 1,000. So like I think medical issues, health issues, communication issues, legislative issues, the judiciary. You ever seen those studies about how judges are heavier handed right before lunch and then hand out lower sentences after lunch? Like shit like that. Dude, stuff like that goes like, so I think if we're really able to rely on AI the way that it's possible, humanity humanity outpaces the need to struggle and moves into an epoch of, it would almost be like, because right now all growth is external. It would almost be like the allowance for a global emphasis on internal growth, which could be really, really devastating, right? It could be like, because people aren't ready for it, so everybody sits around, pounding drugs and having sex and watching TV and eating a bunch of sugar, which probably will be the knee-jerk reaction initially, but I think on a long enough timeline, I actually think people lift out of that too. And then they move into, I don't know, man, something more maybe, like to give a human being time. What a blessing.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
My own experience, what you just described, is that if you were able to solve for some external inefficiency, just say the external is solved. And for the case of what we're saying, let's say that we've solved it with money in some way in our own little small world. We've solved it through money. So now that I have that external thing solved, now I've got to go to the internal place. And the internal place, maybe it's some hedonism and some everything you just shared for a short period of time, but that's lacking in purpose and meaning. So then we've got to go back and find what's the true purpose. And that's where the real work begins. Some don't have the stomach for it and they just go back to hedonism and they just blur out and phase out in life. But others want to go and do the hard work. And that's where that real joy is. And can you enjoy that journey while you're seeking that inner growth? At least from my lens, that's what I'm feeling, sharing, what you've been talking about. And to segue or to keep building on it, because you've said some amazing things. There's a kind of an undertone that I've heard throughout, and it's that you genuinely care for people. You genuinely care for people. You don't want to be the person that's contributing to the murder. You want to help in some way. If you have to play the game within the system, you'll play it as long as you have to, but you're going to try to help people while you're in it. And I think you have a certain affinity for serving people, helping people, Kasim, and I want to kind of lean into that for the second part of our conversation. So I'm going to make a statement, and I'm curious what your response is to this.
Ready.
So here's the statement. Everything is available to you when you're willing to work with and through other people. And I believe you are an expert in business when it comes to how this statement can play out. So I'm curious if you could just riff on that thought, on that thesis, and how you've seen that throughout your life and what you're doing now.
Well, first of all, I agree very strongly with that statement. I think people, Matt, are a miracle. People are, and I mean that literally. And I'm using the word literally, not like a millennial. I'm using it as like I know what that word means. I think that people are a miracle in as much as a miracle is something that's absolutely inexplicable. Even if you're an atheist, you'd have to look at this ultra brilliant, self-propagating, problem-solving super ape that just runs around creating shit is like how is that possible? The human person is a miracle of epic proportions. And it's not some people, it's not just Elon Musk. Like every human being has within them potential. Jordan Peterson says something that I really, really love. The reason we're all captivated by babies, and there's probably many reasons, but one of the reasons we're all captivated by babies is because every baby represents the raw potential of humanity. Every baby you look at could cure cancer, could create a light speed rocket ship, could invent, create. This is where I go back to creation, right? Like the human endeavor is to create. It's to be God-like, not to be God, to be God-like. And to be God-like is to create. And people are capable of that degrees that I still don't think we've really tapped into. And so to make this really tangible, because I realize I've been super esoteric this entire time. So to just be a little more functional in the conversation, Steve Jobs was not an engineer or a developer. And by his own admission, wouldn't have survived in either of those two labor classes. And yet he changed the face of personal computing more than anybody else on the planet because he did it through people. Elon Musk, same story, some development acumen, obviously, but has nowhere near the, what would you say, the intellectual prowess in order to develop something like the electric car or a rocket ship to Mars, or tunnels underneath major cities, but works through people. I'll use myself as a much humbler example. I built the largest and I think best Google Ads agency in the world. I had $100 million in ad spend under management at the time that we sold. I never ran a Google Ads campaign end to end in my life. I don't know how to. I couldn't run ad Google Ads if you wanted me to. Right now today, I could probably figure it out. I'm a pretty sharp guy, but I didn't need to because my whole thesis around life is there's somebody else that's going to be able to do that. I don't believe entrepreneurship is fulfillment. As a matter of fact, I believe the opposite. Entrepreneurship is not fulfillment. And this goes back to Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited. Here I am being a parrot again. If you want to open a bakery, you should not be a baker. You'll get sucked into the weeds. You know, if you're going to open a mechanic shop, you shouldn't be a mechanic. The best CPA firms are not led by CPAs. The best law firms are not led by lawyers. They might be led by people with law degrees, but it all moves into the entrepreneurial psyche. So to be an entrepreneur means you shouldn't actually be doing the work. You should be working through people. And I think that people are the most important tool in business. And the thing that we've done wrong, every business book, and dude, I really mean this. Somebody challenged me on this. For the listeners, feel free to call me on my bullshit if you disagree with what I'm about to say. Every business book ever written speaks about and treats people as though they're commodities. What we're taught is build a process, step one, build a process. Step two, find an easily interchangeable commoditized human being in order to execute on this process. And step three is make money. And the problem with that is people aren't commodities. A commodity is something that can be easily exchanged one for the other. So, you know, if I have a pen, I've got pen A and you come along with pen B and the pens are the same ink and the same amount and the same size, and you trade my pen A to pen B, I'm no better off or worse off than I was 10 seconds ago. The human being cannot be that way. I don't care. The same person doing the same job from the same school with the same background, same level of experience, same degree, same age, is an entirely different person. And we all know this. Like, it's a fundamental truth. One graphic designer is not worth the other graphic designer. One video editor is not worth the other video editor. One content creator is not worth the other content creator. One lawyer, one mechanic, one baker, whatever, one dry cleaner. Like, every person is a miracle unto themselves. So if we view them as a commodity, you nullify all the value of people. And this is a mathematical truism. There's a mathematical principle called the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle says that 20% of the input produces 80% of the output. And it's true in every organic ecosystem. And dude, it's insane. 20% of the cows yield 80% of the milk. 20% of the criminals do 80% of the crimes. 20% of your workforce does 80% of the work. And this has always been true. And I think people have more or less accepted this now, but it's fractal. So if you have 1,000-person organization, which is still a small business technically, but a nice size shop, in 1,000-person organization, 200 people do 80% of the work. And you think like, oh, okay, well, you know, I mean, that's a pretty heavily weighted teeter-totter, but I buy it. But zoom in. Of those 200 people, 40 people are doing 80% of that work. Of those 40, 8 are doing 80% of that work. Of those 8, 1.6 are doing 80% of that work. It equates to about one person doing 40% of the work in 1,000-person organization. Here's what's crazy. Ready? This is the insanity behind the way that we build businesses is most businesses look at that distribution as a risk. So, you know, our Goldman Sachs Ivy League douchebag comes in and says, oh, I see an existential crisis on my spreadsheet. One person is producing too much value. We need to de-risk. We need to diversify. Well, what do? They flatten the hierarchy. They're by intention aiming at average. So if every organization is a hierarchical structure where the more valuable the resource, the higher up the hierarchy they go, what these people are doing is they're trying to flatten the hierarchy. But what they don't realize is the output is a visual juxtaposition. So a hierarchy is a pyramid. So imagine a pyramid in your mind's eye. And I do my best to describe this to those of you that are listening if you can't see me. Imagine a pyramid in your mind's eye. The base of the pyramid is your lowest output. The higher up the pyramid you go, the more output those people are capable of. So if you were to visualize the output, it's actually an inverse pyramid. It almost looks like an hourglass, almost, right? So it's a pyramid at the base, and then an inverse pyramid visualizes the output. Well, if you flatten your pyramid, you don't decrease the output in the proportion that you're flattening. You decrease the output exponentially. You disallow for all of your most outstanding output, which again is insane, but it's how we're taught to build businesses. It's the assembly line model. It's Quicken Loans. So what you can do, if you want to, is you can index towards Pareto. You can index towards finding, and dude, here's the other thing that I believe very, very, very strongly. I think every human has the opportunity to be Pareto talent. They just need to be in the environment that would allow them to grow. And if you think about the way, like I've got some friends that'll do things like, if an employee has to come to work, punch in, punch out, ask to pee, has their screenshot monitored, or their desktop monitor with screenshots, has all their keystrokes managed. Like, in what world is that an environment that would allow a miracle to articulate themselves as such? You're telling this person, you're a commodity, you're a cog in the wheel, you're a piece of my machine, and you do what you're told. There's the theory of intervention says that managers think that work is better when they intervene. It's not true, obviously, right? It's not true.
Yeah.
So if we can create environments where people are actually, authorship creates ownership. I just learned that phrase yesterday from Rafael Cortez. Authorship creates ownership. Put people in a position to be autonomous, to create, to grow, to build, to really inject themselves in something. And what's absolutely insane about it, dude, and at this point I've hired and managed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. It's probably approaching about 1,000 people by now. They do. There's nothing more soul-sucking than being a business owner and feeling like your business is a sled that you're dragging up a muddy hill by yourself. You've got these straps on your back and they're digging into your shoulders and they're cutting deep, and you're dragging this business up this muddy hill all by yourself. And every person you hire, you feel like is another person you're throwing on the back of the sled. And that's the way that it works, because you have to tell them what to do, when to do it, where to do it, how to do it, why to do it, et cetera. You are the manager. Where when you start figuring out how to hire people that grab their own strap it to your sled and help you pull, it's like, oh my God. And then when they start to outrun you, dude, holy shit. But it requires a change in paradigm as to how we treat people. Here's what most people do with management. They give an employee 10 things to do. The employee sucks life at 2 of them. Just horrible. They do 6 passably well, and they do 2 better than any other human on the planet could possibly do. And what do we do as managers? We go focus on the 2 they suck at. And they're like, all right, fella, we're going to get you there. And we're going to build a performance improvement program. And I'm going to coach you on a week by week basis. And it's like, no, stop that. Stop making them do the 2 things they suck at. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it spends its whole life thinking it's stupid. Go figure out the 2 things that they're a miracle at. That just became their job. That's the thing that they should be doing. When I sold my business for an 8-figure sum. I'm rich. It's fun to say. One person managed 40% of my revenue in a 100-person employee. So there's a Pareto distribution. His name was John Moran. One guy, John Moran, best Google Ads manager in the world, managed 40% of my revenue. Here's what's really interesting about John Moran. And when we sold, he was an employee that became my business partner. I had to snap golden handcuffs on him, so I gave him 10% of the business just so he wouldn't leave, because he was so critically valuable to me. John could not follow processes. Couldn't or wouldn't. I don't know which. But when you're managing Google ad campaigns, there's a lot of specific nuances that need to be adhered to. If you change the budget, you have to notate that in the project management tool so that the finance team knows how to bill. If you change the bid strategy, you have to notate that. If you change the geographic target, if you change the ads. So there's a lot of managerial process around managing Google ad campaigns. John was an artist. Okay. He was a literal genius, like a true honest-to-goodness savant. And he would move so fast and make decisions so effortlessly that the management processes we built around managing campaigns were huge inhibitors to him, and he just wouldn't do them. But it made like if your Google ad manager is not telling you when the budget changes, you don't know how to build the client. That's a non-functional business. Most businesses, and let me be bold here, Matt, all businesses would have fired John Moran. They wouldn't have kept him on staff long enough to realize, oh, this is a literal genius. They would have been like, oh, this guy's non-compliant. They would have fired him. I went the other way.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the smartest guy I've ever worked with in my life. I hired an employee to follow John around so that, oh, John made a bid change. Let me notate that in the project management tool so we know to bill. John made a budget change. I benefited massively. The only reason I have any money is because of John Moran. I had the best Google Ads guy in the whole wide world working for my agency. but no other agency would have put up with his bullshit. They would have termed it as bullshit. I know it's not bullshit. I know if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it spends its whole life thinking it's stupid. John was a fish that couldn't climb the tree. I didn't need the fish to climb the tree. I needed the fish to swim, right? So splitting work up and allowing people to be literal miracles, here's the thing about it. It's non-scalable. It's not a scalable model. The problem is scale, and this is maybe the boldest thing I'll say all day, scale is stupid. Scale is bad. The fact that we keep telling entrepreneurs to scale is the dumbest, most short-sighted, idiot-ridden, ideological framework in the business world. Scale means efficiency. Efficiency means a decrease in profitability. Matt, everything that scales, a machine can do. Everything that scales, AI can do. So if it scales, surprise, surprise, you don't have a job. It's forced obsolescence. Now, this isn't true at the top, right? This isn't true if you're Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook. They benefit from scale because they have the mechanism that scales. Small business owners don't. We don't benefit from scale. We benefit from inefficiency. We benefit from a lack of scale. The things that don't scale are the things that you can actually charge people to do. If you want to make money, go figure out what does not scale. It's weird that everybody's like, look what AI can do. Look what AI can do. And I'm like, yeah, you're just finding all the things that you can no longer charge for. What you should be doing is look what AI can't do. That's what you can charge for, right? AI can't have this conversation. Not really. I know that there's the whole Google Notebook that you can build to, but not really, right? Like there's so many things. AI can't love you. AI can't hop on a call and say to me what Matt Drinkon said to me, which was, hey man, you're a sight for sore eyes, right? Like I don't have a relationship with, there's so many things AI cannot do that are insanely valuable that do not scale. So if everything I'm saying to you, if you think to yourself as you're listening to this, oh, well, dude, that doesn't scale. You can't build a process around that. You can't build a standard operating procedure around that. Great, good. What doesn't scale will make you money. What scales will put you right out of business, especially in the world of automation, process management, software development, and AI. So treating people like scalable assets is the fastest way to find yourself in your own self-created prison cell of obsolescence. Treating people like miracles, each of which is completely unique to the other, and putting them in a position to really show what it is they're capable of, well, now you're going to build an organization that's going to last forever, you know? So anyway, that got so preaching, so soapboxy, dude. I'm so sorry.
No, that was great. And I'm curious about the way you just described John Moran, who I love the description. I love everything you just shared. I'm curious what caused you to not do what everyone else would do. He can't figure out the processes over here. So you know what? Every other business in the world is going to fire him because he's non-compliant. Why did you continue to stick with him and take the risk, if you'd even call it a risk? Why did you stay with them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. John was my client before he was my employee. So I worked for John's dad as a vendor. They had this really amazing business that it was sad. It got taken down by a kind of a shady investor who tried to steal their IP. But I was working for Mike Moran, John's father, for a number of years, 4 or 5 years. And John worked for his dad. And John was the hardest working, most industrious person I'd ever met in my life. And because John worked for his dad, that was an ecosystem within which John was able to not suffer the traditional infrastructure of management. So I got to see John in this sandbox of what actually happens when somebody puts up with this bullshit, right? Which his dad was willing to do because it was his kid. And John could figure out anything. And John could do anything. And so I'm watching this guy, and it had nothing to do with Google Ads. I'm watching this guy who is infinitely capable and the worst client I've ever had in my life. Because if John managed me the way he managed everything, when their business went down, I was like, I need to work with him. And so I knew as like an a priori axiom that I was going to work with this man and I was going to make it all work. So I just had the benefit of seeing the value he could produce and provide in this like really special sandbox that had I not seen that, I would have suffered the same mistake that everybody else would have suffered. And I'd be like, oh, he doesn't work. He's a prima donna. He won't follow the processes. I got to get rid of him. But I just had the benefit of seeing him where in this, it was just luck, dude. I just lucked out.
Yeah, well, preparation, opportunity, luck. There's some equation around that. So you saw him under fire. You saw him as a problem solver. You saw him not as he can only do this. You saw him as he can do all of this. And you hired him. You took a shot and you work with him. And so we're talking about him right now, but let's fast forward to you are someone who is an empowerer of other people. You're a champion for other people. And especially, I think you might have an affinity for wanting to work or serve or help people, maybe even in Latin America. I know you have a number of people that you have hired and worked with down there. So can you talk a little bit more about where you're headed in business now and kind of what your vision and mission might look like today, Kasim?
Yeah, I do. I have a passion for people in emerging nations. It's so funny, dude. This conversation's gone so full circle. I had no idea you're going to ask me the question about my political platform. My interest in helping people in emerging nations stems from the guilt that I feel at my understanding of what we've done to their economies. Because the US dollar is built on top of the backs of emerging nations in ways that, I think every economist understands. So, and there's an arbitrage opportunity, just practically speaking. I've found really valuable talent all over the world. So the Philippines, Asia, Eastern Europe, North Africa, great geographies. The reason I like Latin America right now is because a bunch of reasons. One is on our time zone. So you're not asking people to work a graveyard shift. English proficiency is super high. Certain countries, Argentina has one of the highest college graduate rates in the world per capita, produces more economists than any other country in the world. Phenomenal infrastructure, really reliable power and internet. So it's ripe for outsourcing, but their currency was in free fall. It's stabilized now since they've had their regime change. But the average white collar Argentinian is making $300 USD. So imagine paying that person $3,000. Imagine making 10x what your peers are making. How insanely impactful that would be in your life. And you let them work remotely and you give them meaningful work. The thing about being a U.S. employer, there's a level of brain drain here that is difficult to contend with. All the best employees in the United States go work for the Fortune 1000, right? So why would you work for me when you can work in these really fancy businesses with the high rises and $12 croissants and an unbelievable cachet and huge opportunities, or go be an entrepreneur, right? Work for yourself. It's so easy to be an entrepreneur here. The opportunities here are immense. And so it's difficult for us as employers because everybody that's available and accessible to us, I don't want to call them leftover, but they kind of are. And it's not even bad. They're probably better people. Work isn't the thing that drives them. They want to punch in, punch out, make a paycheck, be a dad or a mom or, follow their passion, follow their bliss, whatever. But we're not benefiting from the passionate labor force to the same degree until we go internationally. And then when we go international, we become the belle of the ball. Because, dude, as a U.S. company, even a small one, an Argentinian getting a job with a U.S. company is like an American employee getting a job at Google. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. To pay somebody in the U.S. dollar, which is a stable currency in comparison, to give them the opportunity to work from home, which is unheard of over there, to give them meaningful work and not, horseshit grunt work. Dude, you get triple PhD talent. You get people that are just not just amazingly brilliant, but hardworking, dedicated, committed, grateful. When was the last time you had an employee that was really grateful for the opportunity? It doesn't really happen here because there's just so much opportunity. God bless this country. I love being here. So grateful. And tough place to be an employer. But when I go internationally, I can change people's lives. And so the impact that I make is reflected back to me in direct proportion by just how grateful they are to be working with me and for me. And I benefit from that. Yeah. So if you want to be a good capitalist, go help people. You know what I mean? It's a great way to make a lot of money. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but here I am. I love everything you're saying. I mean, I'm a fan of everything. You've actually referred me to some people that I've worked with in Latin America, one of which I'm still working with, so I'm a fan of what you're saying, but I don't know how to go and source and find people in other countries to come work for me. I don't have the time to do all that. I'm not sure how to do it. How do you answer that? I mean, it's a nice concept, but how do I find them? How do I get to them? How do we employ them? I don't know how to help because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
What would I do?
I'm writing a book right now called Hire. And your audience can have the book for free. When it's done, I'll just give it to them. They don't, I mean, like literally for free. I'll just send them a PDF, but it'll be available on Amazon too. It should be done by the end of this month. I've spent 20 years answering that question. I have a process, step by step, dude. It's exactly how I find people in a recruiting agency. I have a process that it's a funnel. It's a funnel. You put a bunch of people through the top of the funnel, and when they're done going through all the filters, only the best people come out of the bottom. And so if somebody wants to do it themselves, they absolutely can. And they can read my book and follow my process. If somebody wants to just hit the easy button, I have a recruiting agency called Pareto Talent. They can just hire one of my EAs. And we find, train, and place EAs. We stay with them on an ongoing basis, help with the management, help with the training. It's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done as an entrepreneur in my life. But you don't have to hire me. You don't have to work with me. It is accessible to people that want to play DIY. The only note I'll offer is expect to fail forward, because there's some cultural barriers, language barriers, learning, opportunities, like just things that you run into. You're going to have to kiss some frogs. But if you're willing to do that, on the other side of a couple of mistakes is this amazing and immense opportunity. I'll give you some examples. If you hire in India and Pakistan, and my father's Pakistani, so I'm allowed to say this. If you hire in India and Pakistan, Indians and Pakistanis cannot be on time for anything. If a Pakistani tells you Friday at noon, it really means Monday at 4. And so you can either beat your head against the wall and try to convince a whole culture of people to learn how to be on time, or you can just build that into your process. Filipinos can't take constructive criticism. The Filipinos look at Americans the way that Americans look at Eastern Europeans. If you've ever had an Eastern European friend and they come up and they're like, hey, you look fat and your baby's ugly, and we're like, wow, you're really blunt. The Filipinos look at us the exact same way because they're much, much, much softer culture. Eastern Europeans refuse to do things the wrong way. They're committed to best practice beyond what I would consider to be a quixotic commitment. North Africans and the Arab culture rely very strongly on hyperbole and metaphor in a way that makes them difficult to communicate with because we're far more literal. Latin Americans have a commitment to religious holidays that they'll lose their job over. So there's all these things that you don't know until you learn them, and you're probably going to learn them the hard way. And so you can look at that and be like, it's too hard. I don't want to deal with that. Or you can dip your toe in the water, kind of get singed a little bit, but it's not going to be catastrophically damaging. And as you figure out how to navigate around some of those little idiosyncratic behaviors, you end up with this amazing global labor force that can do anything. When I sold my business, Solutions 8, I had 40% margins in an industry that aims at 15%. The high watermark in paid media agencies is 15%, and I was at 40 because everybody else was staffing domestically and I was staffing with international talent.
Let that sink in, listener. If you understand a P&L on a business sheet, and I coach some top marketing companies out there, and Kasim just said 15% is a margin many of them are shooting for, and he's got a 40% margin. I think that qualifies him. That and his many exits and his success in business, that qualifies him as an expert in the topic. So how in the world do you get 40% margin? Wow. That is just amazing to hear that. Okay. So I don't want to do it myself. So I want to take advantage and work with people in a way that I just don't know what I don't know. So what's the next step? If I were to want to work with you or work with your agency, I mean, you don't even have to pitch your own agency, but we are going to go to you because we trust you and believe in you. But how would I start?
I appreciate that.
If I wanted to hire someone, what's the process?
We've got a wait list. So we run one cohort every 60 days and I produce about 40 EAs per cohort. I'm trying to increase that number, but it's hard because we don't want to dip in quality. So if people are willing to be patient, they can go to paretotalent.com, sign up for the wait list. We match EAs according to 2 levels of analysis. The first level of analysis is functional. It's like, what do you need them to be able to do? Is it inbox management, calendar management? Is it research? Is, automation, Zapier, customer service, communication? What is it? What does your business look like? What are the things that you want to take off your table? What do you need them to do? So that's first level of analysis is just the functional piece. The second level of analysis is more personality. It's like soft skills. How do you communicate? What's the personality and temperament of your organization? We had one EA that she was brilliant. She is brilliant. She still works with us. She was a perfect match for this particular employer, but she had a lot of tattoos and piercings. And he let us know, he's like, hey guys, my clients he was in a very conservative industry, and she was going to be front facing with clients. And he's like, I hate to say this, but she's not going to go over well with my clients. They're just not going to resonate with this just visually with the, you show up with purple hair and you're, a bunch of shit in your face. Like my 70-year-old veteran Trumper client is not going to take this human being seriously, for better or worse. Now you can look at that and you can be like, oh, that's horrible. And whatever, they need to straighten up, and it's like, all right, fine. And these are the practical realities of the world. And so that's a level of analysis that we look at. What we have everybody take the predictive index personality profile. There's a billion. They're all good. I like PI the best. And we match them according to not just the functional level of analysis, but also like who's going to be the best culture fit for your business and for you. My strong advice to everybody is a couple of notes. When you hire an EA, from me or from anybody, the first one is do not micromanage that EA. Because what you do is you teach them that they need to be managed. I like the black box of delegation. The black box of delegation says, hey, Matt, so happy to have you. Listen, I need you to produce this outcome. Here are all the resources available to you. I don't care what happens in the middle. Go. And when you manage people like that, when you manage people like that, what you get is creativity, autonomy, self-starters, like people that, and when they come back and all you do is, oh, no, that's not the outcome I wanted. Not, oh, change the square to a circle and change red to blue. Like the minute you start tweaking, authorship creates ownership. So people take their hands off the wheel and they're like, okay, clearly you own this, so you're going to author it, and I just became an order taker. And they don't even realize they're doing it. It's subconscious. But consider your own experience. For those of us that have ever had somebody looking over our shoulder saying, oh no, do it this way, do it this way. It takes 2 or 3 times for someone to do that before you go, all right, dude, you do it. Even if it's not conscious, it's subconscious. And you're like, I'm just going to, whatever it is, because no matter what I choose, it's going to be wrong. And that also means that we have to let go of some things. If your EA sends you something and you're like, gosh, I really don't like that font. Well, who made you the god of fonts? Who's to say that your font choice is better than, now I realize like if it's off brand or if it goes contrary to your voice or your vision or your mission or your values or whatever, absolutely correct that. But that actually becomes a conversation about the materials to use beforehand, right? Hey, here are our brand guidelines. Here's our mission, vision, values. So as long as you can have the black box of delegation conversation, what happens in the black box should not be any of your freaking business. And if you can continue to manage that way, dude, I'm so much more successful, Matt, than I deserve to be. I own a handful of businesses. I own 3 businesses that spit off 6 figures net to me after taxes that require less than a half hour a week of my time. It's a miracle. I'm so blessed. And it's because the people that I have go make decisions, do what you're going to do. They don't do it the way that I would do it. They probably do it better. But if the minute I start intervening, I break that mechanism. You know what I mean? Like I kill a person's ability to be autonomous. And it's so funny because so many employers are like, oh, I wish I had autonomous employees. But then they treat people exactly the opposite of what autonomy would require. So it's just, it requires a paradigm shift. But if you can build that muscle, nothing will benefit you entrepreneurially more than learning how to attract top talent and really use top talent as other peak performers.
The black box of delegation. Here is what I expect as an outcome. Here are some support resources or parameters. Go. I hope the listeners heard that. It is so simple, and it's not overly simple. That was simple. That is the way to do it. Kasim has figured out on a super high level. I'm trying to figure out on my level, and what on my level is, I coach almost exactly what you said. Set the expectation, tell them the result, then get the heck out of the way. I learned that from our mutual friend Justin when he was traveling to Richard Branson's place and he heard a speech from Richard, very similar. I tell him what I expect. I ask him if you have any questions, and I get the heck out of the building.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Where can we go right now to follow you, to find out more about you, just to continue to reconnect and learn with you, Kasim? Any place in particular we should go?
Yeah, go to kasim.me, KASIM.me. If you sign up for my newsletter, I'll give you my book for free. It's not done yet. It should be done at the end of November. So depending on when you're listening to this, it might already be out. But I wrote a book that documented my 20 years of learning how to hire. It's called Hire. I'm writing another book on the heels of it called Delegate. I want to write a whole series, Matt. So, and I'm just going to give them away because why wouldn't I do that, right? It's like, the more people that want to listen to me and take my advice, it just benefits me over the long term. And I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing a podcast tour. I want to be on as many podcasts as I can. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, dude, you really need to be on this show, I'd love to know. I'd love if the only impact I ever had was I opened more people's horizons to hiring international talent, even if they don't hire through me, that'd make my day. Because there are a lot of people in the world that need opportunity. And they don't have what we have here. So for whatever that's worth, I know that's a little soapboxy, but that's how I feel.
Awesome. I mean, I never want to finish the podcast episode with you. I just want to keep asking questions to see what brilliance or what nugget of unique contribution just flows. I asked you earlier randomly, well, what's your platform to run on when you run for office? Not jokingly, but then you gave me a whole wonderful thought on fiat currency, which I appreciated. That was amazing. So I guess if there were 3 words, I'm going to try to stump you here. If there were 3 words that you could outlaw or ban because these 3 words are the detriment of the world or society, what words would you want us to let go of as a people?
I am offended. Or that is offensive.
Oh, man. Yeah. You know what? Here's something interesting. Since we're recording this on November 7th, Thursday, after we just had the presidential election in the United States, which always brings out some emotion from people. Yeah. I find it very entertaining. I didn't get offended at all, but I did watch something today that some could be offended by. I watched a video from someone who's a faculty member at the University of Oregon who, jumped on their soapbox and they said that anyone who voted, for a particular candidate is a piece of crap and I wish they would effing die and you get what you deserve and just really, really mean stuff. That person was highly offended by things out of their control and they were fed a narrative that led them to this. So my question for you, if some people are stuck in the matrix of whatever the mainstream narrative is, and they can't see outside of it, how might we help to break that illusion and truly free everyone?
I'm going to say something offensive. I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Christian person. I think that Christianity in its modern manifestation is actually the theology of Paul, which isn't my statement, by the way. I'm just another parrot. And I think Paul got it entirely wrong. I think Paul started preaching 100 years after Christ. He never knew Christ. He didn't understand Christ's message. And I think that the evangelical ideological commitment is actually something of a disease. So I say that so I can say what I'm about to say. I think the cure, if I can term it that way, to what you just mentioned, the person out of Portland, is Christ. And I'm not a Christian, Matt, but what I'm saying is Christ, philosophically speaking, is the indwelling God that exists within all of us. And if a person really spends the time to look and to see, every other person is a splinter of God. And this is actually true. It's cross-compatible with all major religions. Islamic Sufism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christian mysticism, Judaism, specifically like the mystic forms of Judaism with the Kabbalah. If you allow religion to be more parabolic than literal, which is what it should be, all religions say the same thing, which is you're a representation, manifestation of God incarnate in dimensional form. And that doesn't mean what people think it means. It's not like a statement of narcissism, like we're all God. It's a statement of resonance. You are me and I am you. And if I spend time there in my mind and in my heart and in my spirit, I love you to death, deeply. And you are perfect exactly the way that you are. You're a miracle. And so is that person in Portland who said those words. And obviously it's just coming from a place of pain. Marianne Williamson, who ran for president, said something that I really loved. She was quoting A Course in Miracles, which is another book I really love. And she said that every act is either a statement of love or a call for love. And the statements of love sometimes are hard to accept. But if we can train ourselves to do that, we're better off for them. And the calls for love are hard to answer. And yet, like, dude, I think Trump's a great big kid. I think he's a very wounded, very, very smart, but he's not, I wouldn't want my children to emulate his behavior, let's say. So I can take what a person would say about him and I can understand how they could get so worked up. And I look at him or I look at them and I look at people on both sides. I'm a libertarian who hates other libertarians. So I have no dog in this fight. I didn't vote, Matt, which is a horrible thing to say. I have a copy of the Constitution in my backpack right now today. I can show it to you. I love this country with everything inside of me. I'm related to Thomas Jefferson. I know more than most people do about the structure and fabric of what it is that we've created here. And I've lost faith in so much of it. I think I've actually lost faith in democracy, where we actually don't have democracy. We have representative republic. You know what I mean? Like the electoral college it's just a scam. And yet I have more faith in humanity than I've ever had. But it's because of that. It's because if I can see the Christ in you and I can operate from a point of the Christ in me, then, man, I think there's so much hope. And that usually, functionally speaking, it happens because you've been on the bus where somebody starts to have a heart attack, right? Metaphorically speaking, parabolically speaking, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Been in the grocery store when the little kid falls down and cracks his head. Nobody stops and says, "Oh, are you a Republican or Democrat?" Everybody rushes to help.
Goes to help. Yeah. Goes straight to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's my answer.
Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I think I heard. If I could summarize our conversation, the middle part was quite intriguing. It was about the love of the international worker, that we can make a real impact in their lives, and they can make a huge impact in our businesses that we can't even comprehend when we lean into and work with them and empower them with this black box delegation method. I also remember from the middle of our conversation, team out there, go to ParetoTalent.com and hire Kasim. He won't say that out loud. Maybe he will, but I will. I've known him for a while. Hire him. But what I've really felt from our conversation is that every single person in the universe is a miracle. And then we said a bunch of words, and all I felt was love. Just, learn to love and pour into people. So love people, F fiat currency, and hire Kasim. That's the summation today. Kasim, so great to have you on, brother. Look forward to the next time. And everyone out there, make sure you get his book when it comes out here in November. Hire, H-I-R-E, Hire is the name of the book. And, we look forward to getting a copy of that. So any last thoughts, words, Kasim? That's not an invitation to riff for 30 minutes. No, really, any last thoughts or words that come to mind before we wrap things up?
Thank you for protecting yourself from me, Matt. I really appreciate you, brother. You're one of my favorite people. For those of you that don't know, Matt's about 9 feet tall, and he gives truly the most epic hugs. They're full frontal, like penises definitely touch, and he gives you like this complete wrap.
Tip to tip.
Yeah, tip to tip. He does not let go. And he's exactly what you think. Like the way you show up, dude. I remember the first time I met you, I was like, there's no way that's how that guy is all the time. And I've never not seen it. So good for you for being authentic, and shame on me for doubting you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it. Well, Kasim, pleasure, brother. Good luck with the book. We look forward to the next time we get to be with you. Mr. Kasim, we'll just call him, instead of Kasim Aslam, this is just Kasim.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Take care, brother.